So if you've ever thought about getting your film up on FilmHub, then you've probably come across the name Jason Horton. He's definitely the filmmaker to talk to about FilmHub. He's got over 40 films up there, a mixture of documentaries and genre films. He's also recently finished and released his film A Hard Place on streaming, and he's got another one coming up called The Apex Predators Club. And I chatted to him about a year ago, so I thought it'd be great to have an update with him, talk about things that may have changed on Film Hub, maybe some industry trends he's seeing in the micro budget area, and generally chat about what he's up to next. Enjoy. I had you on about a year ago, and if anyone's interested in Film Hub, learning all the basics, I definitely suggest they check out that episode because it was a really good one. And for me, I hadn't put my film on Film Hub, my old films back then, so it was really a good eye opener for me. So looking back now, what has changed over the past 12 months, do you think, with things like Film Hub and self-distribution?
Well, Film Hub I mean, to be honest, it hasn't changed a lot. One thing that they are starting to do is they're looking to be known a little bit more as a distribution destination. So they are starting to offer like different services that filmmakers might want, like they're doing a little bit of extra marketing or stuff like that, and then they charge basically a la carte for all of that stuff if there's any of that you want to do, but you don't have to. Like, you can still do the free account and all that. You don't have to do any of the extra paid stuff, but if you want it, it's there.
And do you use any of that stuff? I'm guessing you don't. Do you?
No, not typically. Although, the other thing that they're doing is they are starting to take certain films and take on more of a distribution role. So, for example, with The Hard Place, the movie that I just finished and is just being released, they are acting like a more official distributor.
Right.
So, like, I got a minimum guarantee from them. I got some money up front. They spent some money on sales fees. So it's like much more of a traditional like distribution deal.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But they don't always offer that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm sure that you've got like a gazillion films on there. I'm sure they want to keep you sweet. So you've got this deal with Film Hub. Am I right? Because this is the other thing. So I took a couple of old films I got the rights back to, stuck them on Film Hub just to see how that works. It's been really interesting. Am I right in saying the majority of the money, say for example, you make, would come from the US, first of all, from US sales and streams? Is that right?
I would say yes. Although it does depend. So like in the last year, I've noticed like really big gains, like in the UK, for example. So like I have like 3 or 4 documentaries in the last year that are almost every month are doing better on UK Amazon than US. But I would say generally speaking, the US is probably the strongest market.
And thinking about that Amazon thing, because that's something so previously I'd gone straight on Amazon Video Direct. I've got one film on Video Direct. I've got one film on Film Hub. Little confusing, the Amazon section of that.
Yeah.
So if you can explain it to someone who doesn't understand it, for example, how do my minutes streamed translate into money, and how soon do I see, how kind of representative of that money figure is that? An immediate, this is how much it's made to date, or is there any kind of time slip on that? Do you know?
Well, as far as the minute streamed, it kind of depends on the movie and what that movie's customer engagement ranking is on Amazon. And every movie is a little different. So the rates movies make differ between 1 cent per hour streamed and 12 cents per hour streamed. Now, if I'm not mistaken, and I might be mistaken, Film Hub has a deal with Amazon where all of their movies get, I think it's 4 cents per hour streamed, because of their the huge volume of stuff they put out. So so for every hour that your movie is streamed, you're basically getting something like 4 cents. So you got to kind of do the math from there. Now, as far as you getting paid, so let's say, for example, you put your movie up in January, like it gets released on Amazon in January. Amazon pays on a 90-day delay. So you're not going to get paid for January until February, March, till April, end of April. So, and then after that, you're paid every 30 days. But, it's always 90 days back. So that's basically how it works.
Gotcha. And I've noticed and I don't know if this is me making this up, but with Film Hub and something like Tubi, I can see obviously weekends seem to accrue more money than, like a Tuesday or a Monday or something. So I guess what I'm getting at with that is, with Amazon, do you know if that information is kind of like live data, or is it like some of the other platforms where it's kind of catching up?
If you're looking at it through the Film Hub dashboard, I believe it is not live data. I think they get that information from Amazon and they update it once or twice a week. It
Right.
might be once a week. I know I usually check on Wednesdays. I believe Wednesday is the update day.
Gotcha. Okay, that's interesting. And obviously, Tubi seems to be the place to go to make some money on Film Hub. Have you noticed any other platforms? Because I've noticed our films have got picked up on a few other websites, a few other streaming things. Is there anyone else who even comes close to the Tubi money?
Well, so what has happened in the last probably 2 years? I'm actually seeing pretty drastic drops in Tubi revenue. So, overall, like my library, I think I have around 90 films in my library, and I've seen probably a 40 or 50% drop in Tubi earnings. And what is another thing that's happened is like through Film Hub anyway, a lot of movies are now getting picked up by YouTube TV and movies, which is YouTube's own like AVOD service. So it's kind of like just like being on YouTube, but of course because it's theirs, they give it a little more algorithm love. So what I've found in this last year is my movies on YouTube TV and movies have actually overtaken Tubi as my number one earner. So like on Film Hub right now, where I'm making the most money is YouTube TV and movies, and then Tubi is number 2 and Amazon's number 3.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. I don't. Is there any sort of delay with YouTube picking stuff up, or have they passed my movies? Because I don't think I've got. I don't think any of them have gone on YouTube.
Yeah, it usually does not pick them up right away. I think maybe they're scraping data from how your movies are doing on other platforms before they'll take stuff. I know, like I've had some where they picked them up like a year or two after they were released, but it doesn't seem right away, no. And
Yeah.
I do know that they're a little more selective than Tubi or Amazon, so like not everything gets up there. Like I think out of my entire library, I think I have, I don't know, maybe 20 or 25 movies on YouTube.
Right.
Or
Okay.
TV and movies anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. And because you've got this relationship with Film Hub, I'm guessing you get a bit more notice, do you, on release dates on platforms and stuff like that? Or are you like the rest of us, you just kind of, it just appears one day?
Yeah, no, that's another thing. I got to pick my release dates. I mean,
Oh,
you have
lovely.
to do it like at least 7 weeks out from when you deliver, but you can do it. But that's actually something now that anyone can do with Film Hub, but you have to pay a little bit extra for that service. So like if you want to do the paid release date, you can, but you have to you have to pay for it.
Yeah, I think I would consider that on a new film, but I think with the older ones.
Yeah, definitely. And it also depends on, I honestly don't remember the rate, but I think it's kind of high. And you got to decide if that's even worth it, and I think you could, and I believe it's a monthly thing. And if you sign up for just that purpose, you have to like kind of opt into that monthly service for 1 year. So you have to pay the entire year that rate. So you have to really decide if that's worth it over the course of a year. For most movies, I would say it's not. But because it was part of my distribution deal, so I got that.
Yeah. It would be nice, and it is something I know a lot of filmmakers struggle with, is that, and I guess it is why they put that paid tier in there, isn't it? It's kind of, they want to make a bit of money, You want control. You've got to pay for it, unfortunately. So you've A Hard Place came out earlier in the year.
No, yeah, well,
No,
kind of.
so,
Yeah,
yeah,
theatrically, yes.
theatrically. Oh right. Oh, okay. So you've not hit the streaming platforms yet.
No,
Is that right?
it just released on streaming 3 days ago.
Right. Okay. That's because I saw the Amazon link, I think,
Yeah,
pop up.
yeah, yeah.
What? So that being your most recent film you've shot and had released, what have you learned during that film?
Mm. Well, I mean, as far as distribution, not much yet because it's just out. I did learn that there is a market for smaller independent films theatrically, at least in the States. There's a lot of smaller independent theaters that we can, directly contact and, make revenue share split deals with them. And, if you can sell enough seats, you can make money. So I kind of discovered that there actually is a small market for drive-in theaters here in the States. You can do that. I also learned that I like why paid promotion is so difficult when you don't have a streaming release date. So on A Hard Place, I hired a publicist. But like almost all of the efforts that he was putting out, like all these platforms, they want to know what's the release date. And when you don't have a set release date, the news platforms all look at you as this isn't a real movie, because real movies have release dates, so like that's kind of a problem in getting press for smaller films. And I've also learned that even if you're very good and personable, unless you have direct relations with these press platforms, even if you do have a release date, it's very hard to get any kind of like real press on, larger sites without a publicist. Like it's almost impossible.
Yeah. And you don't have to give me the exact amount, but what are we looking at cost wise, do you think, for a good publicist?
It's in the thousands per month. And
Yeah.
you need at least a month leading up to your release. So
yeah
yeah.
Because that was one of the other things I was going to talk about was promotion. And I spoke to another filmmaker a few episodes back, actually, who got a publicist, and that's how they got in touch with me. And it is a bit of a challenge because it feels like if you don't have that, you kind of got to pay. Websites pay, don't they, just to get on the homepage and
Yeah,
reviewers, social media influencers. So you're going to pay someone.
totally.
So yeah, maybe a publicist is the way to go.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the ones then that you don't pay are so small and so niche and so kind of I don't want to use the word rinky dink, but small. So like it doesn't really do anything.
Yeah.
So it's in order to get on some of the larger press radar, you almost have to have the publicist. Like unless you have those connections or have made them in the past and still have them. But even with me, I had a lot of connections at like say Fangoria and Bloody Disgusting and like all these horror websites for years. And some of those writers are still there, but they at this point, unless I'm going through a publicist, they'll hardly talk to me.
Really?
Yeah, because they get so many submissions. There's so many people contacting them. So there's just more movies being made, so it's tougher to get the press.
Yes, there's a lot of movies being made.
Yeah, it's really hard to do a major press push without a publicist, in my opinion.
Yeah, publicist, release date.
Yeah,
both unfortunately cost money. By the
yeah, and more than a lot of filmmakers are making the movies for. So you also got to ask yourself, is it worth that? If you're going to pay more for the publicist and the release date and all that stuff than your movie costs, and if you're making say a $10,000 under movie, I don't know. I don't think I would spend it on that.
Interesting. And just going back to the cinema run you've had, so you just said you're making the calls to those cinemas, is that right? You're setting that stuff up?
Yeah. Now, in my particular case, I am working with another filmmaker that's doing that. So he actually did do the reach outs for the most part. He's starting a company that basically helps filmmakers do that. So he knew I was kind of a hustler. So he called me and asked me if I wanted to partner with him and, use my movie kind of as a test case. His name's Peter Hayaguchi. His company is called Center Road. I believe it's like www.centerroad.com. But he basically, for like a very reasonable price, runs online classes showing filmmakers how to do this. And basically, once you get the contact and make the deals, the way it works is you go out, you get a premiere date in a state, say, and here in the States, it's mostly like Midwest and some South. And you'll have your premiere, and you'll want to travel to that premiere, do a Q&A, all that stuff, sell some merchandise. And then if you sell enough seats at that premiere, they'll continue to play you for a week or two, and as long as you're selling tickets, they'll continue to play, so that's kind of the methodology. And then that same methodology applies to the drive-ins, although they're a little trickier to get into.
Right. And is that completely outside of your Film Hub deal? So they were happy for you to go off and do that kind of as publicity for the film, or did you have to give them a slice?
Yeah, we looked at, I mean, technically by our contract, they would have a slice, but they were kind of willing just to let me do it because it was really a big experiment. And to be honest, I didn't make a lot of money doing it. It was kind of a break even, little better than a break even. I made some money on merchandise, but the actual like sales, even selling out, if you have a 200-seat theater and sell it out and they're selling for whatever, $6 a pop, you're only going to make around, $1,000, so it's, and then if you're traveling, so you're spending $300 or $400 on a flight, a couple $100 on a hotel. By the time everything's done, you're making very little money.
Yeah.
Although unless you're playing for weeks afterwards, and small movies, even mine, and I'm good at promoting, and usually I got a few that held over, but usually by the second or third showing there was almost nobody.
Yeah. But then it must be nice, because you don't normally, as a micro budget indie filmmaker, you only get that kind of, if you show at a festival, that experience of an actual paying audience. So it must be lovely to actually experience that in different places.
Oh yeah, it's great. And it does, like, the way I see it is, even if I would have lost a little bit of money on it, it still would have been worth it for that and for the promotion. Because like, I got a lot of mileage out of, I'm on a road show, across the country. I played in Georgia, I played in I played in Indiana, I played in Ohio, I played in California, and it, like it sounds impressive, even if it's really nuts and bolts not. It's a matter of perception, and that perception can help push sales. Like, I'm having a really good first 2 days on transactional right now, because like, I got a lot of press for this movie, both from that and now from my publicist.
Yeah, that must be lovely. And also, I think it must improve your filmmaking, because you're getting feedback from so many people in the room, hearing the noises, the laughs, the quiet bits, and all that. It must mean going into the next film, you're a little bit more keyed into what the audience wants.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's kind of like test screenings, I guess. I actually interviewed a filmmaker on my channel that does test screenings on his movies. Like, he rents out theaters and then brings in, some strangers, some friends and family, like, to watch the movies with audiences, and then, figure out what's working and not. They made a little $100,000 horror movie a few years back, and they actually reshot the entire ending after doing a couple of these screenings.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. And it's I tend to send links to people I either trust or I know are going to rip it to shreds. But yeah, the thought of having a test screening fills me with dread. But maybe it's something we should all do. So promotion over and above getting a publicist. What can we do if we don't have a publicist? Got any tips on that?
Yeah, I mean, I basically do my promotion like the same way I run my crowdfunding campaigns. I try to have something new to post every day. So like, what I've been doing, from the movie, I pulled screen captures, so I probably have, I don't know, 100, 150 of those. And I take those, and even if you don't have, a million reviews, you can get enough reviews that you can start putting pull quotes on them, good and gory, or, a lot of fun, whatever it is. And you pop up those pull quotes over top of your still image with a logo from the movie. And, I put a different one of those up every day. I'll all my social medias. I'll make it my new cover photo on Facebook. I'll share it to my Facebook group, and then I'll, like weeks later, I'll share that exact picture on my Facebook business page. And then I'll also share it to Instagram and Blue Sky and Twitter and Threads. I've started putting them on my YouTube community tab. So I do that. I have 7 or 8 different trailers. So like I kind of will repost those on a rotation. I usually do 2 a week. Like I'll do one, on Tuesday, another one on Friday, and then like the next week I'll do another one, until I get through all 8, and then I might repeat it once or twice, maybe with more space between it. It's a lot of direct sales, and it's a lot of reminding cast and crew to help promote. It's a matter of, trying to get people to leave the letterboxd reviews and the IMDb user reviews, and if they're watching it on Amazon, leave those reviews. And that's and just making it, people like to be a part of things that look exciting and that are moving. So like if you even if it's not real, if you create a sense of momentum or a sense of excitement, like people buy into it and they want to be a part of it. So like that's some of the things I try to do. And I try to stay on all my different social media platforms. I try to stay relevant to the people that are either following me or whatnot. And sometimes or most of the time, that means not just posting about the movie. Like what kind of posts am I getting interaction with? So like every day I sat down and I think like, what do I have to say today that people are going to comment on? And it's a really kind of cheeseball way of thinking. But, if I like, I made a post, for example, this morning about independent film producers and, how it's kind of a thankless job. People don't really think too much about producers. They don't get a lot of the credit. And, that post got 300 or 400 reactions and tons of comments. So then when I go to post a movie post, like a Hard Place post after that, it's going to show it to a lot of those people, more so than it would have had I not made that post. That's how algorithms work. So I try to stay relevant on the platforms without spending, like all day long. I basically, every morning I get up and I do about a half an hour on social media.
Right. Good tip. I wish I had the energy to do that. It sounds like a lot to me. Although I don't know, you get it all done in half an hour. So many platforms, but I need to get better at that. I think a lot of filmmakers do. So what was I going to ask you? So you've done tips for promoting a film. Looking at other filmmakers, without naming any names, what do you think the big mistakes are that people make, say on a first feature film?
I think the biggest mistake people make is false expectations. Like I think a lot of filmmakers have this false idea of how much movies actually make in the marketplace, and 90% of independent films just don't make anything. Or nothing substantial. They just don't. And they think they're going to be the exception, or their movie is going to be, their Reservoir Dogs, or, their Clerks, or whatever it is. And then they're so disappointed when the reality sets in, that they either quit or, they'll take a little bit of time, maybe try another one, then they'll quit. It's just, I think false expectations are a killer. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't reach for the stars or try to, have the Reservoir Dogs or the Clerks or whatever, but you have to realize the reality of it, And then the other thing, I think filmmakers think that if they make a good movie, that's enough. And 9 times out of 10, it is not. You have to get out there and promote it, or hire somebody to promote it. And that there's so much stuff out there, unless people have a reason to click on that thumbnail, or, they're not going to. They won't find it.
Yeah. And it's funny, I chatted to Jim Fredrickson, marketing masterclass guy who did all the marketing for Harry Potter, Shawshank Redemption, all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And the thing he said that made me laugh was how the film doesn't have to be good to be successful.
That's true.
And it's kind of the reverse of what you just said. It's exactly that. It's that you can have an awesome film, but if people can't find it, or if you don't promote it in the right way, then you don't stand a chance.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at me, just in the documentaries that I make, and I'll be straight up, I'm not making the highest quality documentaries. Like, they're not technically, I mean, I would say they're not even technically very good, but I'm serving a certain audience, and I know how to promote them, and I make a pretty good living just off the documentaries, you know, and it's totally because you know, like knowing how to serve an audience, you know, and knowing how to promote to an audience. And sometimes it's not about having the best thing, it's about having the right thing.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think in general, indie filmmaking, are we in a good place, do you think? Are we in a bad place? Are we at a turning point? What's your sort of take on that?
You know, it's like the best of times, the worst of times.
Yeah.
You know, on one hand, we have unprecedented access to distribution. You know, pretty much any film that gets made can get distributed and get onto platforms where millions of people could watch it. You know, so that's something that when I started, that did not exist. You know, like it was there was much less people that were able to do that. Now, pretty much anyone can. So like that's exciting on some level. And like when I talked about the documentaries, you know, there 10 years ago there was no market for that kind of thing. No distributors would take it. The only place you could put those things would be YouTube. But now there's actually all these like niche streaming platforms where you can make a little bit here, a little bit there, you know, and there's audiences that are watching them and liking them, and like that didn't exist. So like that's exciting. But, you know, like overall, when you're talking about individual movies, they're just worth less. They're just worth less. So like, you know, a movie that's shot for, you know, $50 to $100,000 today is worth, you know, half what it was in the marketplace 5 years ago, and probably 25% what it was worth or less, you know, 10 years ago. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
With few exceptions.
Yeah, definitely. And so you got the Apex Predators Club, it's the next one, and you another horror. So is that a is that like a financial decision to make another horror, or is that like a fun decision? Where are you with that?
It's a little of both. So you know, I did pretty good on Craving. It looks like I'm poised to do much better on A Hard Place. So and Apex is a bigger movie. I have, you know, some bigger name talent attached. I think that one will do even better. And my plan when I did Craving was to do 3 monster movies. That one, a slightly bigger one, then a bigger one after that. What I do next, I'm not sure. But so it's a little of both. And right now I have some momentum in horror. You know, so I'll ride that for, you know, as far as I can.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Especially if you've done that theatrical run, you can go back and they'll know who you are, which is good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I can go to these, you know, drive-ins and theaters directly myself next time, you know.
Yeah. And for someone who's working on their first feature film, if you were to start today, didn't have all your backlog, didn't have your documentaries, didn't have a following, what would you do if you had to start right now and I said to you, let's make a feature film?
I mean, it sounds self-aggrandizing, but I would do the exact same thing I'm doing. I mean, yes, you know, like the budgets of, you know, A Hard Place and Craving, they were close to $100,000, and a lot of people aren't going to be able to raise that much money first one out. But you know, like I didn't fund any of those movies myself. You know, I crowdfunded them. I raised some equity for them. My documentaries, I literally make those for nothing. You know, like, you know, sometimes I do a revenue split with a shooter if they're doing interviews in another state. But for the most part, you know, I know how to edit. I have a little camera. It's not even a super nice one, not even a cinema camera. And I shoot those interviews, you know. So I would do exactly what I'm doing. I would take whatever I have access to, and I would start making things that I can turn into something that's monetizable, you know, and then I would build up enough of it that I could take bigger and bigger risks. Because that's basically what I did. I mean, I did the documentaries long enough to have enough of them that I made a floor of money, and then I was able to take off 6 months to do Craving. I was able to take almost 12 months off to do A Hard Place, you know. Apex will probably be more.
Definitely. I need to find out what the UK equivalent is, because I know you're sort of Bigfoot, aliens, kind of all that kind of stuff. What is the UK equivalent of that I can shoot cheaply?
I couldn't tell you. Maybe ghost stuff. You guys got a lot of ghost stuff, right?
Yeah, we got a lot of ghosts. I suppose
And I believe a friend of mine is from the UK, lives here, and he's really into UFO sightings as well. Maybe that, I think stuff like that, or finding any kind of niche, like folklore that's specific to a region. Loch Ness Monster is kind of one, but that's been so disproven over the years. You don't get much. I did a Loch Ness one last year, and I didn't get nothing from it. But but yeah, I don't know, just maybe something like that.
I hope that was useful. If you're interested in listening to another episode that's all about self-distribution and getting your films out there, then you could try listening to How to Make a Profitable Low-Budget Movie on Tubi with Justin Milton. Justin's a producer and director. He's done a bunch of low-budget thrillers and dramas that have done very well online streaming platforms, and he's starting to make a significant profit. So do check that one out.